call this meeting to order, the Kaneland Community Unit School District 302 Board of Education regular meeting. And I would like to let everyone know that the board meeting attendees, that this meeting is being live streamed and archived for access at any time by our community members on the internet within 24 to 48 hours of the meeting's conclusion. So we will stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mrs. Barber.
Here.
Mr. Lawler.
Here.
Mr. LePayton.
Here.
Mrs. Pavlik.
Here.
Mr. Rivas.
Here.
Mrs. Witt.
Here.
And Mr. Carey is absent.
All right, since we have a physical quorum here, we have Mr. LePayton on the phone, and so we can move on. Thank you for coming. So next will be consideration of moving anything from the consent agenda to new business.
I3, please.
I3. Anything else?
We'll probably have to put that in the closed session.
Okay, so we'll put that into closed session.
No, I don't think so. It just has some questions with it.
Okay.
It's not
about the purse.
It's not about.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for the clarification.
So I'd like to,
So that'll be I or J5.
J5? Okay.
You're welcome. Sorry to interrupt.
No.
Okay, so I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended there. So moved. Second?
Second.
And a roll call?
Mr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. LePayton.
Mr. LePayton.
Mrs. Pavlik.
Aye.
Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Mrs. Barber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. And then we'll move on to board and superintendent salutes.
Yes, tonight, with it being right before school starting, we, again, over the summer, we didn't have any students come in, and we don't have students or staff for tonight, but we do in September. One of the two board meetings, I'm not sure which one yet, we'll let our new staff members get acclimated to the district, and we'll have the little event where our HR department, Mr. Atkins and Mrs. Ross, put together a little welcome at about 6:30, a little meet and greet, and then we'll go right into our board meeting. So that'll be coming up at either the September 10th or the September 24th board meeting. And that was all I
Great.
had.
Anything else? No? Okay, so then we will move on to public comments. The board values public input to inform our decision-making and to provide information and insight into what is happening throughout the district. Board meetings are held to conduct the business of the Board of Education and are required by law to take place in public. However, they are not public forums. We use the public comment section as an opportunity to listen to our stakeholders. For that reason, the board does not enter into debate or respond to questions spontaneously or without proper investigation and deliberation. In most cases, concerns or questions requiring follow-up will be referred to the superintendent. If you choose to speak publicly, we ask that you stand, state your name and village of residence or your association with us for the record, and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less so that all who wish to speak may have that opportunity. You're encouraged to seek a private appointment to discuss matters concerning individual students or staff members. While public education can be an emotional issue, and understandably so, the board strives to maintain a certain level of decorum at the meeting. Those who speak are expected to maintain a tone of courtesy and civility. The floor is now open to public comment. No? Okay. Moving on. So next will be the consent agenda. Tonight, the consent agenda includes the approval of the treasurer's report from July 2018, approval of minutes from July 30th, 2018 regular meeting, approval of destruction of audio recordings from closed session meetings from January 2016, approval of motion not to release executive session minutes from January through June 2018, approval of classroom use agreement with Mid-Valley Special Education Cooperative, approval of memorandum of understanding with the Congressional Medal of Honor Foundation, and the following informational items: the field trip notification and the Freedom of Information FOIA report. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? So moved. Second?
Second.
And a roll call.
Mr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. LePayton.
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlik.
Aye.
Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Mrs. Barber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. So we'll move on to the first item of new business, J1, approval of Support Professionals Education Association of Kaneland, the SPEAK contract.
Yes, as I shared in the board memo, I'll just share a couple of the highlights that, again, that the board and SPEAK bargained throughout the 2017-2018 school year, last school year. The board has been apprised in multiple executive sessions during the course of negotiations. The tentative collective bargaining agreement that we have before us tonight is a 4-year agreement that would expire on June 30th, 2022. So I'll see if any board members that were part of that committee or any other board members have any questions or thoughts.
Anything?
Glad that one's out of the way.
There you go. All right then. So like,
Thanks to everybody that worked on it. It's such a great deal and make everything move forward.
definitely. So I'll actually get the formal motion. So I'd like to entertain a motion that the Kaneland Board of Education approve the SPEAK contract as negotiated between SPEAK and the Kaneland Board of Education.
So moved.
That would be Mr. LePayton, and a second,
Second.
and then roll call.
Mrs. Pavlik,
Aye.
Mr. Rivas,
Aye.
Mrs. Barber,
Aye.
Mrs. Witt,
Aye.
Mr. Carey,
Aye.
Mr. Lawler,
Aye.
and Mr. LePayton.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. And I'd like to echo Mr. Lawler's comments. Just thank you to SPEAK, the administration, definitely the board members, and Maureen Lemon, our attorney, for all of their hard work. It was really a collaborative sessions that we had, and I'm appreciative that SPEAK ratified the contract by 94% and a unanimous vote of the board is fantastic as well. So thank you, everybody. All right, so we'll move on to J2, approval of addendum to educational support staff, bus driver, and food service employee handbooks, first reading. Oh, you just missed my moving speech. Rewind.
You can listen to the
It's
Have to
being
go home and watch
taped.
it on video.
Okay,
You get some clicks.
it was a unanimous vote.
I don't think they heard you.
I didn't hear you. Okay, I think Chris gave them. All right.
Don't listen to the tape.
So we'll move on to J2, approval of addendum to educational support staff, bus driver, and food service employee handbook, first reading.
This is updated, or at least considered annually, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Fuchs, and she can share some of the highlights.
Sure. The board has already approved the handbooks for the 18-19 school year, but with the conclusion of the SPEAK contract, we'd like to propose an addendum following our conversation in executive session. The addendum will be included in all 3 handbooks. In some cases where there is no language, it would be added to the handbooks. In other cases where there is language, it would replace the handbook language as existing. And so the first thing would be to add language about evaluations. The bus driver handbook has specific requirements for evaluations, but the food service and the educational support staff is pretty minimal. So we would propose that this language be included in those 2 other handbooks, and then update the one in the bus handbook so that it's merged together and flows. Secondly, on the probationary status, it would be added to all 3 handbooks for that. And then with the probationary status, during that time, they would get 1 personal day at the beginning and 1 sick day at the beginning, and then each 30 days get the rest of them. Upon conclusion of their 120 days, that's when they would get all remaining personal and sick days. The purpose of that language is to prevent a new employee from coming in, working, say, for example, 1 day, and then taking the rest in sick days and not doing any further work, but perhaps resigning or something. So we haven't had an abuse of that, but we have had instances where we question, how did that happen? And so I think this language is very good to help protect the district with that. The next language, mileage reimbursement. All handbooks have mileage reimbursement. It's a part of board policy. What this does is it helps folks to know that they need to submit on a monthly basis or within 2 weeks of incurring the expense. We don't want people saving it up all year and then turning it in at the end and things like that. Personal leave, we have the majority of 12-month employees, so this language, while it will be in the handbook, will affect very few people. I believe it's 1 or 2 people at most, and that is that, let's see. Hang on one second. It's the all other ESPs. That would be anybody that's not 12 months. They would get 3 personal days, but they're going to get it by converting one of their sick days into a personal day. And again, I think it only affects one person that we could come up with for that. The rest of the language is exactly the same. Leave of absence, there was no language specifically for support staff. The board policy addresses certified staff, and so this language would allow the board to consider a request for a leave of absence. The board still has the final say, but at least this way there's language that they could consider it. Before that, we didn't have any language for support staff for leaves of absences. For vacation time, this one is almost exactly the same language. The difference is how it's calculated when you have a part-time person turn into a full-time position. It's calculated exactly the same way as it always has been, but the example makes it more clear on how it's calculated. And so after 5 years of full-time service, we go back and we give them 1 vacation day up to the maximum for their length of employment. But first they have to be in that full-time position for 5 years. Again, nothing in here has changed. It's just more explanatory of how it will be calculated. Paid holidays, again, in the support staff non-speak, we have primarily 12-month employees. But what this says is that if you're not a 12-month, if you were supposed to be working on the day of a holiday, so say, for example, you work Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and Labor Day is on a Monday, you would then get paid for Labor Day because, albeit but the holiday, you would have worked, so that would allow you to get paid for that. Full-time people are already getting paid for that. This applies to part-time people, and that's the shift. Similar to that other language, I believe that only currently now applies to 1 person. So, but what it does do is if we hire future part-time employees, this language in the handbook would then apply to them. Health insurance caps, a couple years back, it's only been 2 years. The district was trying to save money on health insurance, and so we put into effect some caps that said the district would only contribute up to a certain dollar amount. Those caps have been removed. What language exists now is the same language that's always been there, and that's for single coverage, it's 95% district paid. For dependent coverage, if you are 12-month, it's 75%, and if you're less than 12-month, it is 50% dependent coverage. So what the caps were doing is it was reducing that dependent coverage and that single coverage lower than the 95 and lower than the 50 or 75. Those caps are gone, so those original amounts will stand, and that really only affected people who were hired after July 1 of 2015. So it was a handful of people, but nonetheless, the caps will be removed. And then my recommendation tonight for the board is that you approve these addendum changes as presented upon first reading. If there are any questions, I can answer them and or bring them back. But then next meeting, they would come back on the consent agenda for you to approve, and then once you approve that consent agenda, then it's approved. So, approved for real. It takes 2 readings. Right. Approved for real because it takes 2 readings to do that. So, sorry. Are there any questions?
So all of this was not because of the the contract, right? It was kind of mixed.
A lot of the language is exactly the same. Some of it has minor changes, but this way, this handbook will reflect what's in the contract. Similarly, when we created the speak contract, we mirrored a lot of things out of the handbooks. So it goes both ways for speak and non-speak.
So just to reiterate my
Sure.
question, or rephrase
Sorry.
my question. Some of these are related to the contract itself, and we're obviously filling it in.
Yes, I
Some of
agree.
these are not, right?
All of them are.
They all are, okay.
Yeah. We didn't change anything that wasn't changed, that didn't have a change already. We did that back in May and
Okay.
June.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, I'm sorry, were you done, Pedro? I feel like I might have jumped in on your question. Okay.
Yeah.
As far as pay rate goes, we usually try to reflect pay rate for non-union and union employees, try to even those things out. So can we assume that we will try to do that in the next 3 years? That we will try to be, equitable and similar in what is in the speak contract for those non-speak employees?
Yes, that's something that we did. The initial outset of the first speak contract, we did the same thing. We ended up alternating the salary increases and some of the benefits a year later in arrears so that non-speak and speak matched.
Okay.
So we would do the same thing in this instance, yes.
Okay. Thanks. I do want to just thank you guys. I really appreciate the fact that we do keep everything equitable and fair. I think it's important, across all employee groups that it stays that way, whether, they're union or non.
Any other comments, questions? No? Then I'd like to entertain a motion that the Board of Education approve the educational support staff, bus driver, and food service employee handbook changes as presented upon first reading.
So moved.
Second?
Sure. Second.
And a roll call.
Mrs. Barber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Mr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. LePayton.
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlik.
Aye.
And Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. So we'll move on to J3, transportation update of special education services.
Yeah, for the 2017-18 school year, a lot of our transportation is for our special education students is via Illinois Central, and one of our goals, one of our ideas last year was try to house some of those routes with our own transportation department, and so the board at that time asked for a one-year update, and so we did that for the 17-18 school year, and so now we have a little bit of information in this memo and some other information that Dr. Fuchs will share on some of those findings, and then Mrs. Eggleston's here from our special education department too, if there were any questions for her.
Great, thank you. So, as you can see in the memo, we did start bringing some routes back from our contracted service in-house. We were able to do that because our enrollments had decreased and we had consolidated some of our regular routes. So it freed up some buses and some drivers to do those special needs routes. I call it unfortunately, we were hoping to capture savings by doing so. It appears that it's costing us about the same amount of money, although please know it's a little bit challenging to calculate exactly. We calculated it two different ways. One way we did it was the same way that we did it when we estimated the savings, and then the second way was we did it where we took the per miles and we backed out the salaries, used actual salaries, and then used the rest of the per miles on wear and tear and things like that. Both ways came out about the same. And so while I would say we're not saving actual dollars, what I would say is that we have seen the benefit of having Kaneland drivers with some of our Kaneland students. Additionally, for the driver's sake, it helped them to stay employed. And we already had the buses, so that was good. We did buy one small bus, which we believe with the smaller buses and smaller vehicles, there is additional savings to be had. So basically what we're saying is similar to what we did before, is when there are opportunities for savings, we would like to continue to provide transportation for students with special needs. When it comes up time to talk about buses, we'd still like to talk about adding some smaller buses. Those buses are not only used to transport students with special needs, but also some of our smaller sports teams and clubs. So we feel that they're a better use, more economical on the road, and could seek some savings that way, and then that way they could be used twofold. But in terms of major changes to what we're doing, we feel that right now we're serving an appropriate number of students. This coming year, 18-19, I believe we've lost 4 special ed routes for various reasons. Either the placement has changed, or we can't do that one anymore because we need the drivers for the regular routes. We are having a little bit of trouble finding enough drivers for all of our routes. So we're trying to keep the puzzle going in terms of, can we handle this one or should we give it back? And there's constant communication. Fran, do you have anything that you would want to add to that?
Not really. I would just like to highlight, most important, as much as I want to save the money as well, the most important thing is that our Kaneland drivers are providing as much transportation as we can to our special needs students. I truly believe that they get better service through our own district than if they were to get it from an outside agency, because they care about our kids. And also just reiterating the fact that special transportation is constantly changing. It's a moving target because students' needs are constantly changing along with their placement. So once, let's say Karen routes, or Lewis previously routes a student, something could change by another student needing to be added to that route, or them going to a different location. So it's a lot of work to keep track of that because it is changing. But once again, our Kaneland staff does an amazing job with our kids, and I really wish we could provide our own transportation for our special needs kids. But I'm very grateful to all of you who are willing to allow us to pick up more of and provide our own transportation as much as possible.
I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
How many of the smaller buses do we have, just out of curiosity?
3.
Okay.
Yeah, 3 yellow ones, 59, 60, and 61. So 3.
Okay.
Yeah. 2 of them are 29 and 1 is 22.
And
Most of them are equipped with built-in little harnesses. Well, a couple of them have lifts for wheelchairs. And then the other ones is that they have the early childhood seats.
Okay.
Because those are the ones we're using for early childhood too.
I think you have a couple, don't you have a big bus too?
With a lift and some built-in seats now, because that was one that came in this summer. We got one of the big 72 ones. That'll be good for field trips when you take multiple classes. So it has the integrated seat is what they're called, where they have the seat belts for the little ones.
okay.
So,
And that large bus allows our students that have special needs to be able to go on field trips or places with their peers, as opposed to be isolated and put on a separate bus just to get the lift bus, which is what we had to do in the past.
Was that just by accident that we got that bus?
we planned for it.
Okay,
It was-
I'm sorry,
yeah.
but I don't remember, I just remember authorizing buses, I didn't remember it's fine, I just didn't
Yeah.
remember that detail.
Julianne, is it possible, so some of these discussions don't come up at the same time, like allocating money to buy buses doesn't
Right.
come up at the same time as needs of our students. Will we be able to have all of that to look at, the data? Like, so for example, if you come with a recommendation that you would like us to buy 2 more small buses, that you can say, we currently have, 5 students that are unserved by a small bus that would benefit from this, and then also have the data of when you're talking about how much it costs to do the transportation, that then the cost of those buses is incorporated into that, so we see the whole picture.
Absolutely. Because last year we didn't buy any smaller ones. That data wasn't necessary. That's what, we weren't recommending it at that time. We're still not recommending at this time the expansion of the program, just perhaps additional vehicles to help save some of the 72, the bigger buses on the road with miles.
Okay.
But definitely I can provide you with that information.
So the timing
so
does
that
work out?
That's right.
Okay.
So that it all comes at one time.
Okay.
So definitely.
I think I remember
Yeah.
from that conversation, we talked about maybe student attendance would increase because some students had maybe issues sometimes. It maybe would help them to get picked up later occasionally. Did that ever happen? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
We did.
Good.
So it wasn't last year, but it was the end of the year
Oh,
before.
okay.
Where we talked about a specific need that we have in our district where we had 2 students from the same family that needed transportation, and they're young. They're going to be going through, Kaneland, hopefully, throughout their whole career. And you guys approved a small bus that allowed us to provide that transportation. And in inclement weather, when the students couldn't come at 8 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning, they could come at 10 o'clock because the weather warmed up. And yes, we've been able to provide that transportation. And grateful to Kaneland that they had a bus driver, not just a bus, but a driver available at that time as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
So I believe our special ed department and our transportation department have been working very well together. Because they have to at this point in terms of communication. But also, it really helped this summer. That's the other thing that we're doing is we're providing transportation for summer school for students with special needs. And so to have Karen full-time now has been very helpful. Well, I say Karen, but that position, the assistant position, because now she's the director, but having the assistant position full-time has made a difference during the summer as well. Because you have to have somebody, if you're providing transportation, you have to have somebody on the radio, and you gotta have a mechanic available. That way, if the bus breaks down, they can send a rescue bus, and especially in the summer with the heat. So, yeah.
So we currently have 13 routes, right?
That was for the 17-18 school year. That was last school year. We're gonna only have 9.
9 routes?
For 18-19. But it changes. At any moment, please know, that's what we're planning right now. But as Fran mentioned, if there's a route that comes up that we can handle and it's cost effective, we'll take it on and plan accordingly.
Okay.
So it's very, very fluid this time of year. Kindergarten routes are changing, early childhood is changing. Everything changes until about next week, Tuesday, about 6 o'clock.
And then you hope it's done by then.
Exactly. It's very, very fluid. That and then daycare pickups.
Yeah.
We have to remind our family if they want to be picked up or dropped off at daycare to let us know, because without them telling us, we just don't know those things. So.
Small buses. So we're not talking about the little white one that's out there.
No,
right? Not that
no,
one.
it's a yellow bus, and I would say it's not quite half the size,
Right.
but just shorter.
3/4,
'Cause,
whatever.
yeah, it holds. Some of them hold 29, others hold 22. It just depends on which model.
Correct.
So, but they're yellow.
Right. In your reiterating the things that are in here, did you say something in reference to having issues or an obstacle in finding drivers?
Yeah, there's a driver shortage across the area. I don't know if I'm going to say nation, but area. And it ebbs and flows with the economy. As the economy picks up, there are more jobs for lots of people. And so sometimes that makes it difficult to find bus drivers. I believe we're going to be fully staffed for the start of school, but I know we're still in the process of getting everybody in the right place. But it's been a challenge.
Now, the ones that would be handling our special needs students, those are
our drivers that are already employed and they're consistent.
correct, but where I'm going with that
Sorry.
is that if we have a shortage there, I know they had to go through some special
Yep,
training, if you will,
yep.
and such, so,
We also trained all of our subs. Fran did.
Well, I just trained all bus drivers that are providing transportation from Illinois Central and Kaneland, and about special ed and disabilities and how to handle situations and communication and those kinds of things. I wasn't teaching them how to run the bus per se, but I'm offering the instruction on how to handle kids with special needs and communication with parents and those kinds of things. And I just did that last week.
And then we put our subs in that training as well. That way if one of the drivers is ill, we've got a trained sub for that special needs routes.
right, and that's where I was going, so the backup
Yeah.
plan is there, that's awesome,
Uh-huh.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, so we're not in, a couple years ago, we had an incentive to get bus drivers, we're not there?
Karen asked if we could reinstitute that, and I told her if we needed to, we could, because the board never told us that we had to take it away. We haven't had to for a couple years. I haven't checked with her yet today to find out if she got somebody with or without it. So if you'll recall the incentive, it was $500 upon hiring if they already had a CDL and a bus endorsement. And then after they completed one school year, it was the other $500. So, and then also there was an incentive if you found somebody for us, a finder's fee, a $500 one for a finder's fee. So, we paid them out the 1 year that we instituted that, and then for the next couple years, we didn't need to. And so, we talked about that. I think it's probably been a week or two ago that she talked about, if I can't get people, can we do that? And so we said yes. We didn't, we did advertise, but we didn't put the incentive in the paper.
Okay.
Because we did that in early July, and I said, let's wait a little bit, and so, I think she's doing okay right now. I'll check in with her and see where she's at.
Okay.
So-
I kind of heard.
Yeah.
Plus or minus, we would or would not have issues on that, that's why I asked the question.
Yeah, so,
Anything else? I think there's no recommendation, so that
No.
was, talk about it again?
yeah, thank you, I appreciate it.
Sounds good. All right, so J4, approval of donation.
Yeah, we're very fortunate to have another generous opportunity for a donation through the high school. Mrs. Maris was contacted, and then obviously through Dr. Fuchs's office, and I'll let Julianne tell us a little bit more about the donation.
So this one is another very sizable, so thank you for the introduction. This one is up to $10,000 by an anonymous donor, and Ryan just had me check board policy. We are okay
Thank you.
accepting a donation from, it doesn't specify if it's anonymous or not, so that's not a problem. This one, the purpose of it is to purchase a trailer specifically for the Kaneland High School Marching Band to carry their equipment and to take it to parades and to competitions. Currently, the marching band is using one of our maintenance trailers, and they've outgrown it because they have more kids. Our band is growing, which is a good thing. They have more kids, more equipment. We will do like we normally do for all donations. The district will typically pay for it and then get reimbursed by the donor, which I believe I've heard, in fact, I know I got the email today that the money is in hand for the Kaneland Performing Arts Boosters. They have it. So as soon as they pick out which trailer they want, we'll purchase it and then they'll cut us the check. So it should work very smoothly. They will use one of our trucks to pull it one of our maintenance vehicles, and it will be covered under our insurance. And they will be very proud to have a nice logo on it. That's what they're working on now. That says, Kaneland High School marching band and things like that. So they're very excited. I did remind them that, of course, it becomes district property. If we would ever need it in an emergency, the district would be allowed to use it because it's ours. But on the other hand, we will designate it for them and not plan to need it. Just if something happens, we would of course have access to that. So, and the donor wants to remain anonymous, so I'd like to respect that request and ask the board to accept the donation of the new trailer up to $10,000 by an anonymous donor.
Okay.
Couple questions.
Sure.
So you answered one of them, which was we wouldn't be using both trailers, they'll be using the new one, if you will.
That's right.
So now we're getting a new vehicle, if you will. Do we have any issues with parking on that? Or to park it, whatever?
We'll find a place in the high school lot to park I have a feeling they're gonna park it near the band room, door 20 down there, the E-wing, or down that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they weren't using it, they weren't intending to use it outside of transportation, like storage,
I believe they are gonna store some equipment in it.
which would kind of potentially hinder what you said earlier.
If we need it in an emergency, we'll have them take everything out and then we'll use it in that. We don't plan to use it just in an emergency. We've still got our trailer, so we can
True.
use it. Yeah. But we don't wanna, we wanna make sure that they know that it belongs to the district. And so in the event of,
That's how you can insure it, right?
right, you got it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but we have no plans to use it.
Anything else? No, so I entertain a motion that the Board of Education accept the donation of a new trailer for the Kaneland High School Marching Band up to $10,000 by an anonymous donor.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
And roll call.
Mrs. Witt?
Aye.
Mr. Carey?
Aye.
Mr. Lawler?
Aye.
Mr. LePayton?
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlak?
Aye.
Mr. Rivas?
Aye.
Mrs. Barber?
Aye, motion carries 7-0. So now we'll move on to J5, which will be the approval of resignations and employment of staff.
I took it out, and the reason I did was the last item, which is our position for the basketball coach. I thought that was an interim position. I expected to see that on there, but at the same time, I understand as like any other contract, they're yearly, which potentially that's what we're thinking where it covered it, or should we see interim in there?
We don't necessarily need to see that because they are all annual positions. Each stipend is good for 1 year, and then they're all 1-year renewable stipends.
Yeah, and I think there was a message that you sent us that we would be additionally looking for a person, or have we stopped?
We've stopped for this year. This is the person we're recommending for this year, and then as we get into the school year, if we do move on, or when we move on, hopefully, as Mrs. Mayer shared with me, that there may be some additional teaching positions based on retirees for next year to potentially find another coach if needed, or when needed.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I had.
Okay, so this individual is not a teacher currently?
Not in our district right now.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay. If nothing else, then I'd like to entertain a motion that the administration recommends that the Board of Education approve the above employment recommendations.
So moved.
Second. Okay, a roll call.
Mr. Carey?
Aye.
Mr. Lawler?
Aye.
Mr. LePayton?
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlak?
Aye.
Mr. Rivas?
Aye.
Mrs. Barber?
Aye.
And Mrs. Witt?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. So we'll move on to Superintendent Board reports.
Yep, there's a lot to do as we are getting ready to start school. First, our foundation meets tomorrow night. Foundation committee meets tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. Then I know President Sparber is our representative tomorrow night. And if you'll recall, one of the things that we did, we shifted the foundation cycle from an October entry date, and then voted at that time, and then had the grants approved in November, or October, November. So what we did is we walked it backwards, so that way now we're going to be discussing them tomorrow night, approved prior to the start of the school year, so the materials and supplies can be purchased at as close as possible to the beginning of the school year for their immediate usage. And then also get ready to have some more conversations regarding the planning of the golf outing, which is September 20th, and some information has come out from the foundation on that already, and more information will follow. Next thing is on the 14th, we just did the 14th. On the 17th and 18th, this weekend, as part of Elburn Days, our special ed department, as we talked about earlier, as they're very proactive in our community, on Friday, this will be the third year that the Elburn Lions, along with Windy City Amusements, provide a special session from, I believe it's 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock on Friday for our Kaneland students with special needs and their families, and as needed many times, some of the students with their modifications, there's less noise, there's less lights and flashing, so it's a friendly environment for them to be able to, the students and their families to come and partake on the rides. And then on Saturday, administrators traditionally have volunteered their time as part of the relationship with the Lions in the ticket booth. So if you're bringing a little one, or if you yourself are going on any rides, come to the ticket booth and we'll sell you the wristbands for the rides on Saturday.
Do we get a discount?
No, the Lions watch very closely. We will not, don't want to ruin that relationship, but thanks. And then Monday night, or Monday morning, welcome our staff back and any board members that are available. We do have breakfast at 7 o'clock in the high school cafeteria. Then we transition to the auditorium, recognize some of our staff, welcome them back, and then they begin a 2-day induction and professional development opportunities to start the school year, and then our students officially come next Wednesday, the 22nd. Our next committee meeting, CAC, is Thursday, the 23rd, and Mr. Rivas is on for that night. That's next Thursday, and we will we'll share a lot of the back to school. We'll get some feedback, anything back to school that's going on with our students, and then also we'll provide a Kaneland 2020 update that the board will also hear then the following board meeting on Monday the 27th. Let me see, like I shared, there was a lot. That's all I have. Thank you.
Yep. I just wanted to let the board know that I did receive the $85,000 check from the Hendricksons. So that's very exciting, and we'll keep that in the bank until it's time to pay for the scoreboards, which have been ordered, 8 to 12 weeks lead time, and so hopefully we'll get that all going as soon as we can. Secondly, last Thursday, an administrator from each level, along with myself and Dr. Burchell and some other administrators, met with all of our first responders, and we have had attendance from each police and each fire jurisdiction. So it was really, really well attended this year, and we reviewed all of our safety practices and procedures, and each of the buildings had an opportunity to meet with their people specifically to set up drills and dates and acquaintance meet faces, names to faces. We have just a couple new people. So it was a very, very productive meeting. From this point then, we will let each of our buildings meet with the first responders and stay in touch with them throughout the year as needed, and hopefully not that much. So it's good.
Thank you.
That's it.
All right. Anything else from the board?
I just have one question. How is the new floor in the gymnasium coming along? Is it,
Update?
update
There
on
were
it?
pictures on social media.
Yeah. It's down, but it's not ready yet. It's going to be a couple more weeks as we anticipated.
Okay.
But we've got the material, as I mentioned, on July 30th had arrived.
Right.
And it's been put down, so now they're doing all of the buffing and the things that the waxing and the things that they need to do. But it's going to be a couple weeks yet.
Okay.
And then once that's done, then it'll be a couple more weeks, and then the bleachers will come, and then a couple more weeks, and the scoreboard will come. So volleyball is the one that's impacted most, And they knew that they would be for the first couple games. It's just going to be a little bit longer, and they'll be able to play their volleyball games at Meredith.
Okay,
So they've made arrangements for that.
okay. And it's looking good.
It is. It's beautiful.
Good. And any topics for future agendas?
I had one, but I don't remember. I didn't write it down.
We'll be meeting again.
27.
So that, yeah, that will work. All right, so we'll move on to the second opportunity for public comment. Any public comments? Do I need to read you the rules? No.
I'm sorry we were late. We were at our executive meeting and we were trying to get here in time, so I missed your comments. Disappointed that we get here, and I'm disappointed Peter's not here. But then I heard his voice. Hi, Peter. Just wanted to say thank you very much, Peter, for all you've done. Can you hear me? No? Is he gone?
Peter, can you hear Carolyn?
I can. Thank you so much.
Okay, good. Good. We will miss you dearly. Thank you for all your work.
Thank you.
I miss you all. I will miss you all as well. Thank you.
Okay. And thank you again. We missed the vote, but thank you. And it was great working with all of you. And I think after doing this twice now, we're getting to know more about each other. And I think it just is going to get better from here out. I'm going to watch to see what you said about us. It sounded like you said some nice
I'll talk
things.
to you afterwards. I'll repeat it.
Okay.
Or you can watch the video.
Yes, well, that's what I was going to do, but she said she didn't. And then I didn't know Javier was going to be here. There was a nice write-up about you. I wasn't planning really on saying that till I saw it, but that was a very nice write-up about Javier Martinez. If you haven't read it, Google him.
It's very nice.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, there we go.
There you
You got him up.
I just wanted to take a moment to thank my building administration, the district administration, and obviously the board for approving the memorandum with the Medal of Honor Foundation. Real quick kind of update, since you last approved it for last year, for the last school year, I've gone from Alaska down to Florida, Kansas, out to the East Coast. I think I've trained upwards of close to 600 teachers. So again, doing the math, every one of those teachers probably has at least 100 kids a day through the different sections, because it's mostly high school. You do the math, you give me a chance to impact about 60,000 students across the country. Thank you, and I'll hope to report back next year at the same time. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else? All right, then tonight we have an executive session. So we are scheduled for an executive session, but there will be no action taken following the session. So therefore, after the vote goes into executive session, tonight's recording will be concluded. So we're going to go into executive session for the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. All right. So I need a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
So moved.
Peter does it. You can have a second. All right, and I think we do roll call.
Mrs. Farber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Mr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. LePayton.
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlak.
Aye.
Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Peter.
Is he done now?
I was
I
trying
think
to think of
so.
questions I could ask, just to buy you some time.